Bonjour, welcome. I'm so pleased to be here in the company of Ed Pien. Ed, thank you for being with us through the magic of Zoom. You're in Toronto. Here we are in my gallery, Pierre-François Ouellette Art Contemporain in Montreal. And this show is dedicated to you, of course, but it's also dedicated to collaboration with a number of people that have been important in your career in terms of your gallerists. So Maurits van der Laa in The Hague, Robert Birch from Birch Contemporary in Toronto, and also I also asked to join with Atelier Piroir that committed to do a really amazing suite of prints with you. So Ed, in the course of the pandemic, we weren't trying to create more work for you because, you know, with the many, many years of your career, I won't say decades, but you have done some amazing work. And I think that going back to works from 10 years ago is really not a disservice in terms of what you are contributing to the art scene. So for me, it's a pleasure to be working with Maurits, with Robert, and with Agathe, and of course, all of us joining to work with your fabulous production and also human beings. So I wanted to ask you, you've been working with Maurits and with Robert for quite a while. How did, in a few seconds, how did your encounter with Maurits in The Hague happen?
Right. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for mounting this show. I'm very excited because when they say time will tell, I'm curious as to the staying power of the work since some of them were made from 2010, I believe. And so I'm just thrilled to be able to revisit them. And also, I would like to thank the other gallerists for collaborating, including Atelier Piroir. And so I met Maurits when I had a show in Holland in 1999, in fact, at W139. And Johannes' cousins, they're all Dutch, knew Maurits and asked Maurits to come and see my show. And he came and then he just signed me on. So that was the story. So it was in Amsterdam, in the red light district, in this artist-run center called W139, where we first met. So it goes back quite a ways. And Birch was from I think 2000 exactly. And I quite liked what he was showing. So I was going to his galleries and one day I just approached him and the rest is history. And I was invited by you. I was very fortunate. And that was around 2001, I believe, 2001.
Yeah, just after your show at Oboro, that really, really moved me so much.
Thank you.
So in the selection, actually, you worked to procure us works from a really interesting series that was presented at both Birch and at Maurits. So I'm calling them blur cuts, but you might want to correct me. And people are familiar with your paper cuts, that are using 3M reflective material, but works there are actually, can you tell us a bit about, because the medium is different, and
right.
approach to show some of these works that I'm talking about?
I really enjoy making paper cuts. There are certain aesthetics, but there are also certain limitations when you're making paper cuts. So for instance, it always adheres to a very flat surface unless I drew into it. So I really wanted to explore how an image could be manipulated to become a paper cut. And I was looking at Chinese traditional cuts and other Asian cuts where they can try to blur the edges by creating frills, cutting frills on the edges. And I thought, well, that's very time consuming and it's a craft. And I really wanted to push the illusion of how to make these blurry images. So for me, it's a simultaneous of exploring the space that's actual. So the cutting goes right through the surface of the material, and the illusion of the space that's created with these layerings of blurrier images. So it's actually quite photographic and very cinematographic, I would say, because I'm really playing with the illusion of space beyond spaces. So when people look at the work, I would say that they get to see two different kinds of shadows, the actual shadows and the shadows that are illusionary because they are, from the photographic image. So there's this, I call it a treacherous way of looking, because you are looking at the surface and then you think the illusion takes you back beyond the picture plane. Then suddenly you're dropped half an inch into the bottom of the paper. So it's a negotiation with your eyes and your mindset when you're looking at the images.
I know that really the flatness of internet and really does a great disservice, and that's why I'm hoping that people can actually come and see, because indeed the juxtaposition of the shadow that you have created in the work versus the one that I'm actually seeing that is coming from the projector is really quite interesting in terms of you wanting to penetrate with your forest.
Right.
That you did hear from Maurits. So what strikes me is the kind of very different feel from the paper cuts I know of yours. For example, in this case, there's actually words that are coming out. So, and I was wondering if you wanted to talk to us a bit about the kind of like insertion you're doing with that goes beyond what we were expecting of birds, nests. So something is happening in these works that are, I feel, a bit different from the other ones that I know.
Well, because I also take lots of photographs, I'm able to look at images and see which one may play well. The intention isn't to create a narrative per se, but to evoke a sense of a narrative. So people are, I would say, intrigued. They are curious as to what's actually happening. So I'm setting up a condition where there's a potential to be read in different ways. So here I really like the way that the text can come out, because text is really hard to cut. I've done it only one other time. And so here I can actually play with text and give the illusion that is actually cut out and is floating in this space, a void, but in fact, it's actually the paper. So it's not cut out, but there are other areas that are cut out. So it's an insertion of a billboard into the space to create another layer of the illusion of spaces.
So we don't need to actually understand what the billboard is about.
No, but it's also backwards. And it has been a while. I'm sure I picked the words on purpose, or the letters, but at this moment, my memory falters.
You said that you're using photographs that you do. So I'm curious, did you come across a stabbing, or what is happening in this piece where it's called Crawl, if I'm not mistaken?
Well, Shadow Play, which is a video I made playing with shadows, it was made in 2010. And this piece was made at the same time. I was actually quite inspired by the Shadow Play performative action that I did and made into a video. I really like the illusion or the ambiguity of creating this sense of a story behind something where you can only see the shadow and not the figures themselves. So here I had, again, pictures of myself and pictures of my partner, and I used them to transform them into other figures. And here it literally looks like a person sitting on a donkey or sitting on a body and moving. So the person sitting on top actually has no legs. It's just a torso, but the hands, the arms and the legs of the body underneath kind of make up for the missing limbs. So in fact, the figure on top and the figure below become one figure. And they're on a journey. So it's a strange figure, very hybridized, and they're in this very strange landscape that seems to go on forever.
Well, this actually brings me also to a video that we're showing. I know it's during the day, so we might not be able to really appreciate the complexity of the piece. And here we are going through the vitrine of the gallery, where we see another piece of the blur cuts. But now, I can show you in there is also a suspended moon. And I think we can see
Yes.
the beings. And for me, there's kind of a relationship with the morphosis that is happening with the other and what's
Right.
here. Can you tell us a bit about this
Yes.
video?
Love to. You're very perceptive and very great in connecting different works together. So these two are in fact related, because the origin of this piece is very interesting, because in 2010 or 10 or so, I think Sylvain Aimard came to invite me to make a set for him. So it developed over the course of a few years. So while we were rehearsing on set, I had paper up, which I wanted to know how to use it in the dance with Marc Bovin and Sandra Lapierre, I think. And so while they're rehearsing, their shadows are always kind of cut through onto the paper. So I actually asked them to stand so that they overlap. So the shadows are always conjoined. So while they're rehearsing, it just looked like this transformation that goes on and on forever. So sometimes you see a centaur, sometimes you'll see a figure with two heads, or with three limbs or two arms, and then like one leg. So it's slowed down as a motion to create this endless cycle of metamorphosis and transformations. The moon is important in the Chinese culture, as in many other cultures. We imagine that there are figures living in the moon. So it is about stories and mythologies and wonder and magic. So for me, this is a very special piece that in fact wasn't a standalone like this that you see. It was made to go into the piece for Tracing Night, in fact.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Tracing Night being one of your large labyrinths.
That's right. That's right.
So I'm hoping that the curfew will be finished before the end of the show, but because it's really an amazing piece to experience by night. And we'll try to insert some images, or on the website you'll be able to see, because also what is happening is that the moon and the video reflects onto the window also. So you have like these double things within the space. So hopefully people can come. I'm just going to pass in front of another work that we won't stop on, but I just wanted to mention the fact that you also did transformation from the paper cuts to metal cuts too.
Right.
I'll show you another one that I think is very atypical in your practice, because it's very industrial looking. I don't know if we'll be able to see. Yeah.
Right.
So here we have this piece where I'm actually going to take it. I don't have any white gloves, but so you have where actually they were in a very kind of post-industrial setting. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration between this actual piece?
Right. Well, I am, again, thinking about the limitations of paper cuts and how I can go beyond the limitations of paper cuts. So paper is quite flimsy unless I cut on really thick paper. And most of the time you need to have a border so the thing that you cut doesn't fall apart on you. And it wasn't until when I was invited by David List to make a fundraiser for the MoCA, so the Museum of Contemporary Canadian Art, that I thought, okay, I'm going to make an edition exploring the practicality or the whatever potential that metal cuts have. So it was a piece called Jump that I made initially. And after that I was quite inspired to make more, because these now can be bent so they stand on themselves on their own, or they can still be hung. So they have a slight relief coming off the wall if you wanted them to be on the wall. So here, in fact, so everything has a story tied to it. I went to Sagami, the Centre Sagami in Elma to do some prints. And I just fell in love with the transformer stations that were near the town. And I loved the geometric lines and the sense of architecture. And I felt that's a space that's as complicated as forests, as trees that I've been working with, but it's much more geometric. And so I started to explore some of these spaces in the more, I would say, linear qualities of the work.
Wow. And I know that, for example, you also explore lichens in a piece, a huge metal piece that's in actually
Yes.
Paris at Canada Goose store, flagship store in Paris. And I know that you're working on different things that we hope to be able to announce soon. So
Mm,
I think what I felt important in this show of collaboration was also to show how you have collaborated with many medium and so
right.
be able to have your some video, the metal, the paper cuts. But one of very strong that goes back, I think, to very long ago is your passion for engravings. And so I know I could have reached out and asked you to provide us with some of your prints that you did in plan, for example, or in that.
Mm,
But I wanted to show also, or in Sagami, but I wanted to show also a really beautiful collaboration that speaks to different ways of treating your work because people might know your very classic, well, I'm calling it classic Ed Pien drawings, and I'm just going to roll this thing here. And I was actually quite surprised talking to the engraver about the difficulty and the numerous techniques that you've used to create, from chine collé to silk screen to etching to aquatint. So, tell us a little bit about your relationship with tell us a bit about your relationship with the medium of engraving in all its facets. And I'm just going to roll my computer to the other side where there are more prints.
sure. Well, I love making prints, especially intaglio prints. And the reason is it has drawing, aspects of drawing, and it has a sense of unpredictability because you're working in many degrees of processes, from working on the plate, from working on film, from working on paper, then transfer the image onto plate. So at every step, there's a chance for it to mutate, I would say. And I love that sense of mutation. And so working with intaglio, what I like about it as well is the fact that because you're pressing paper onto a sheet of metal that has grooves in it with ink in it, the ink, when it's picked up, it also embosses the paper. So if you look closely at the paper has this very beautiful materiality, tactility, and kind of, I would say, sculptural quality to them. And the one that you're showing now is one of my favorite of the suite. And it's actually done with a little Dremel tool. So literally I had a little drill that creates a mark on the paper, and it made this dry point. So this particular work is called dry point. And literally I would just use a Dremel, let it run wild, and then try to negotiate the marks, the random marks. And what surfaced to me were these groups of ghosts. And it's one of my favorite in terms of print techniques, because with dry point, in the earlier plates, when you're printing them, the edges are very fuzzy, very furry. And I love that soft quality about them. And so you can only do so much before the burrs on the edge of the metal actually gets flattened through going through the press. So it's only the first 10, 15 that still have that quality. So it's a rare way of, and a beautiful way to achieve certain conditions that you cannot get from drawing or from other kinds of printmaking.
I hope one day some institution will think of doing a catalogue raisonné of your prints, because you've really explored so many ways the idea of prints. And even I believe you helped Atelier Circulaire with one of their fundraiser,
That's right.
a very complex silk screen process, but also
Right.
laser cut. So
Right.
really quite interesting how your relationship to the material is actually coherent from one to the other when you're talking about the piercing. And so I think it's really quite amazing. I know it's really bad image right now from my computer camera right now,
Yes.
but this is the work that is actually inspiring the title of the show, Somnambules.
Right.
And I wanted to maybe end this really nice conversation about the works that we've reunited here, thanks to Atelier Piroir, Van Maurits, Van der Leer, and Robert Birch. On this piece, and could you tell us a little bit about these somnambulists? And I just want to bring the camera closer. Oh, sorry. There's echoes of the images, but there were like little creatures appearing everywhere in the print.
Well, it was a very difficult print to make, not for myself, but for Agathe and Alain at the studio, because I wanted a completely black paper to start. So they actually hand dyed each paper. It wasn't just a black piece of paper, that they had to find the darkest possible ink to create this very, very, I would say, infinite sense of darkness. And they did a great job. So here is a piece that has several techniques involved. It does have sugar lift, and it does have soft ground, and it does have traditional engraving or intaglio print, not engraving, but intaglio. So 3 of these came together to make this print. And it's really also hard to use white ink on black paper because it gets diminished very quickly. So you need to have a very strong opaque white that can stand the challenge of the black that always wants to come through and cover up the whiteness of the ink. So here, I would say this piece has been inspired by my spectral drawings. The spectral drawings are done with white ink on black paper. And I really love that sense of a ghostliness of a night scene. But here with white, what I really value is the fact that aside from it being a line, it becomes a light. It becomes an element, but it also is the light itself that's giving shape and form to the images that you see. So here, I think that the title is quite apt because at night, things happen, or we imagine things happen more that are inexplicable that happen at night. So here, there are these tendrils of heads that kind of move around in the darkness. I guess I imagine them to be more like, oh, there's a word, I forgot now, but literally some people can actually at night seem to astral project, that's the word. So I was thinking about astral projections, how they are always tied to an umbilical cord or a thread, because if they lose that line, they actually would fade away forever. So here, these heads are out exploring, but they're securely fastened to the root and the tree or the very organic shapes that are grounding them.
Well, I actually have, every time I talk to you, and I learn something, and I know that it would be just amazing to have something just about printmaking one day. But in any case, this is kind of what I wanted in this moment of the pandemic. We're still just all trying to figure out how to live our lives through the new challenges of, and shortening distances by bringing these works here from 3 different places, bringing you from Toronto through this Zoom actually enriches my having to deal with limited access to the gallery. But I think that beyond internet, beyond virtual fairs, and I think it's important to be able to like actually see the work. And so I'm really grateful to all the collaborators in this show and to you in particularly. And we're very happy that even with the sanitary restriction, we'll be able to have 4 people at a time.
Oh, nice.
The show for the next 5 weeks. So Ed, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure, Pierre-François, and thank you again for putting my pieces up and together.
It's great. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing what you're working on. And well, we'll keep in touch.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.